Welcome to Spokane Talks, where you find news, views, and conversation that includes respect for opinions, facts, and diversity. Spokane Talks is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys, Ponderosa Republican Women, and Rana Paint.
Welcome to Spokane Talks, news, views, and conversation. I'm Ryan McNeese. It's primary season, and you've received your ballots. Tonight, on Fox 28, you're going to meet two more candidates, Dave Lucas and Timm Ormsby, both of the 3rd Legislative District. Let's meet the candidates.
The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys.
Okay, welcome to Meet the Candidate. And my guest for this session is Dave Lucas, who is running for the 3rd Legislative District, Position 2, Representative.
Yes, ma'am. Here in Spokane.
Here in Spokane. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
And this is just an opportunity to get acquainted. And we were getting acquainted before we started, and we thought we better turn the microphone on. Let's start with a little bit about the real background, where you grew up and went to school.
Okay, so I grew up in a really small town, probably analogous here to Davenport, maybe even a little bit smaller. It was a little bit less than 1,000 people. Great little community, great opportunity, really some of the same qualities and values very similar to here in Spokane, which is one of the things I just so much love about being here and a great place to raise kids is it's just such that wonderful community and contact of friends, neighbors, people you meet on the streets. You know, as I do doorbelling now, the people I meet across the community are just great, wonderful people.
Well, what were some of the things you most valued about that growing up in that small town, some activities you had a chance to do?
So the lack of risk was one of the great things of being able to get on your bike and ride to the lake, or get on your bike and ride to the pool, or I have wonderful memories of 4th of July and being able to just run around with friends and watch that was one of the traditions there is everybody would donate by these buttons called I Bought the Works. And you would basically, I think they were, when I started there, they were probably $1. I think they're $2 or $3 now. And being able to run around and friends and not really worry. I mean, I don't remember my parents ever fretting or worrying about what I was doing. And the few times I did something I shouldn't have, it was very humorous because before I even got home, my parents knew that I had done something I wasn't supposed to, and a friend or a neighbor had called and, you know, do you know what your son did? And would walk in and I heard you were throwing rocks, or you were doing this, or you were throwing balloons at so-and-so. Yes, I'm sorry, you know, and whatever the punishment it was for it. But yeah, it was a great place to grow up. It was a great place to work as a young kid and just be in a very just safe environment where you really didn't have to worry about things and make great friends and have wonderful activities.
What kind of work did you pick up then?
So it was very funny. So I actually got a job at when the movie theater, they brought a movie theater back into town, which was one of the big to-do things. And so lined up early with my tie and my when you had to type on a typewriter, my typed resume, and that was one of the reasons after the owner said why I got the job, because I was one of the few people who took the time to do that. But what they didn't realize was I wasn't old enough to work without a work permit, because that was in the days when you had to go find. So they had decided they weren't going to hire anybody for that, but they had, from the interview, decided, hey, we're going to hire you. Huh? Then they had to go back but it was a wonderful job. Obviously started just working as a cashier, you know, taking money for popcorn and helping. Ultimately ended up running the theater, learned how to run a projector. And, you know, again, in a small town, you know everybody who walks through. So it was just a really neat quality place. And then, you know, plenty of summer jobs in addition. Worked at the pool as a lifeguard. I worked in town, helped people move, did yard work, mowed lawns, you know, the traditional
traditional odds
type
and ends
of things that you did as a young man to work and earn money and, you know, be involved in the community again. And you knew, you know, and that's one of the other great things of knowing people and having all the neighbors around, you know, a wonderful place to be.
Well, after that wonderful childhood and high school. What further education and training did you go on to?
So I always felt and kind of drawn to service. And so as we talked before, I ended up joining the Marine Corps. But even before that, I was involved in Scouts, graduated as an Eagle Scout, went on to college, did my undergraduate in economics and political science at University of California, Davis. And then
was that before or after Marine Corps?
So that was before. So I did.
Okay.
So I did that through ROTC. Helped pay for part of my school. So I did ROTC at the University of California, Berkeley, and that was a great program as well. Getting an opportunity to meet some diverse folks and learn a lot of different things. And then graduated from school and went on to the Marine Corps and spent a little over 21 years in the Marine Corps. Retired as a lieutenant colonel. Traveled pretty broadly. I was an artillery officer, so did big cannons, but as I tell people, really the last many years of that was really just working in broad organizations. My last combat deployment was to Afghanistan, and I was in charge of the Afghan National Security Forces Development Program. So basically the police, the border patrol, the Army, all of the forces that were Afghan nationals that we were training to take over responsibility for security of the country. And so worked with the advisors and the other leaders that were in the country to help work with that. And so that worked with a lot of different services. We had conventional forces, we had special forces, we had foreign country forces. It was very interesting and obviously covered about the southern half of Afghanistan to help basically build their security infrastructure. So it was a very good experience. Traveled a lot around the country, just meeting with different folks, governors of different precincts, police chiefs, Army commanders, border patrol chiefs, things like that. So it was pretty interesting. Traveled, got to see some very interesting things. One of the more interesting things was in a place called Lashkargah down by the river there that runs through it. There was an old relics of a fort that basically Alexander the Great had built. And you think about that, thousands of years ago, somebody had been there working in that country. And so really offers a very good perspective and a real joy when you come back and get to meet just the wonderful people and the community and the sense of altruism and service that you see here. Because we take that and try to offer that to these other countries to try to help them to adopt some of those great traditions that we have of helping your neighbor, helping folks out to do better, help to facilitate success, whether it's through volunteering in your community or working downtown at a shelter or trying to help at a soup kitchen. I mean, there's lots of working in the neighborhoods. So it was a good experience to see and really help in another country as well.
We don't have that kind of 1,000-year perspective on things, or more than thousands of years, more than just 1,000. So you retired out of the Marine Corps, and what brought you to Spokane?
I will sometimes facetiously say a girl, but back to as we talked about, we really wanted a place where we could raise our sons. I have two little boys, and wanted some of that sense of that small town, community, people of really good character and just that really great neighborhoods. And so my wife had gone to Gonzaga, and so we had a connection here, and we have friends that were here. But really, it was that community that drew us here and have been just a wonderful embedding into the community. We've had such a wonderful experience, as we say. I mean, the neighbors, the friends that we've met, you name it, it really has been just a wonderful transition, and couldn't have picked a better place. I mean, we've seen a lot of places around the world, and really we're honored to be able to settle down here in Spokane. It's been a great place.
Well, you've obviously described a life of service in many ways, but elected office is a different kind of service. What prompted you to volunteer for elected office?
Well, I've been involved in a lot of volunteer effort in the community a lot, and so I've seen a lot of the both good and bad. And most recently, there were some things that came up, and just as I've worked through, I just don't feel like we were being well represented. And things that I would see come back, and you read the paper, and you're like, that isn't something that Spokane would believe in. Why are we doing that? That isn't something that, that isn't going to benefit somebody who's trying to get to work every day and pay their bills and be successful and raise their kids. So why are we agreeing to this? Why are these people voting on these and going down this road that I just don't think was fair representation of Spokane? So the more I won't say I anxiously accepted this calling, but the more I researched it and looked at it and realized that if you're going to make a change, you've got to get involved and make a change. You can't just sit on the sidelines and go, well, you know what, that isn't really what I think we should do, or that isn't really in Spokane's best interests, and was in a position to do it. And so talked with my family, and we decided to make the leap and get involved and really try to make a change, a positive change for everybody.
Well, you kind of already answered that last question, which is why should voters choose you? But if you've got the last 20 seconds.
The last one. So I really want to represent Spokane, and I think that is something that I would love to, the privilege and the honor to be able to say I do represent Spokane. But I think my experience, the training and the effort, very broad, and the leadership to be able to bring together people and to really work for the things that will benefit Spokane, help the folks to really lay the foundations and kind of facilitate their success. And I get a lot of I love seeing that, whether it's involved in Boy Scouts or it's involved in the Marine Corps or in the neighborhoods. I love seeing people have a great life and succeed. And so I think I can help with that and would love the honor and the opportunity to do that. So I do ask Spokane to support me and to give me that opportunity.
Okay. Well,
Thank
congratulations
you.
on stepping up.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, Dave,
I
and
appreciate
stay
it.
hydrated while you're doorbelling.
It's been wonderful. Like I said, I've really enjoyed it. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Ponderosa Republican Women is a club with members that come from every part of Spokane County. Although they differ in age, occupation, ethnic background, and cultural heritage, these women and many men stand together to promote government based on conservative principles, discover lifelong friendships, meet elected officials and candidates, hear challenging speakers, receive campaign training, and learn about the electoral process. Our meetings take place on the second Thursday of every month. Follow Ponderosa Republican Women on Facebook for more information.
Welcome to Spokane Talks. We have had the opportunity to be out here on the Z Nation set. But also we're excited at Spokane Talks. We have several shows, different genres, from real estate radio, Spokane Talks Live, Meet the Candidates, The Locker Room. We have several shows coming to you that can be found on all social media platforms, as well as coming up on Fox 28. Thank you so much. It's been a great opportunity being here at Z Nation set. Thank you.
See you tomorrow night, and thanks again for taking care of the painting.
I got this.
Bye.
Weekends are made for painting. Let the experts at Rada Paint take care of you.
Hi. This looks amazing.
Rada Paint, over 80 years of quality, tradition, and trust. Find it in every can.
So, welcome to Meet the Candidate. My guest for this session is Timm Ormsby, who is running for 3rd Legislative District Position 2, currently serving.
Correct.
Thank you, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate the service that you're conducting on behalf of the folks, your viewers.
We just want to give everybody an opportunity to meet all those names on the ballot,
Yes.
and give everybody a chance to tell a little bit about themselves, and start with where did you grow up and go to school?
Well, I grew up right here in Spokane, right in central Spokane.
Okay, then you have to name the schools.
So I went to St. Aloysius Catholic School for 8 years, and then to North Central High School for 4 years, which is pretty much the sum of my formal education. Grew up in an education family. My dad was a high school teacher at Rogers. Mm-hmm. My mom was a social worker until they started having children, and they had 8 boys in 10 years, and I'm the third of
That's
those
efficient.
8. That's one way of describing it. But it was chaotic and hectic, so that's where I went to school, walked to school, came home every day from elementary school to soup and sandwiches that Mom made for us, and fell in love with the neighborhood. My wife and I are both from that Central Gonzaga neighborhood. Live next door to where I grew up, so I'm one of those people that grows where they're planted, and that's where I'm the most comfortable.
Well, and I know that you did do training after high school because it's in skilled trades.
Correct.
And that's a valuable.
It is, and so in terms of and it was an education, and it was
is.
higher education.
It is an education.
And that was my experience in construction. A lot of it, all of it, learned on the job, and very much appreciated that experiential component as opposed to the lecture and textbook and other things. It becomes very real, and I notice that with students today. It becomes very real when you actually do it. It sticks, your retention and recall is much more accurate and there when you've had the hands-on experience. Just a little anecdote, the state treasurer, Dwayne Davidson, had a conversation about this, and Treasurer Davidson said, "I'm not sure that I remember much about the classroom, but I remember every field trip we went on and the things that we did," and so that's an important component to education.
Well, and that's part of knowing how each person learns differently, and some have to experience it. And I'm a big proponent of career and technical education courses because that's what works for some people. And as an architect, I'm very appreciative of good carpenters.
Yes, because they put your vision
exactly.
into.
They have to. It takes both. So.
And I love that division of labor and the roles and responsibilities and how we each refine our craft and how it all works together. Not unlike the legislature.
Yes, everybody has to work together.
Yes.
So one of the questions that I ask people about too is the early work experiences as a youth. What did you find to do around the neighborhood?
Well, there was lots to do around the neighborhood. We just lost our mom late last year, who was she was the cement, so to speak, that she was the matriarch and the one who must be obeyed. And she was the lone woman in this family of 10. And she definitely left her imprint. And we were recalling, my brothers and I, recently, that at one point we counted there was 50 youth under 18 that lived on our block because it was the 1960s, you know.
Right.
And in a Catholic neighborhood. And we weren't for much to do. One of the things that I recall specifically about growing up was our father's insistence on service. And whenever it snowed, at about 6:15 on those mornings, as he was getting ready to go to teach, he would come into each of the bedrooms and say, "It snowed." And that meant we got up, we donned on our winter clothes, grabbed one of the dozen shovels on the front porch and went and shoveled the block. We had a lot of elderly neighbors.
Sure.
And when we were done, we'd come back in and Mom would have hot chocolate for us. So those were the things that were instilled in me growing up, was about service. And then when it came to getting paid for things, lawn work and other things around the neighborhood, learned that it probably wasn't a good idea to be charging people for shoveling snow, given that experience.
Yeah.
But substituting when we'd substitute for folks with paper routes. But when I actually got my first job, it was washing dishes at the Chef Restaurant on Hamilton in the neighborhood, and spent most all of my high school years there washing dishes.
So some lessons that you would like to say that you've learned from those early work experiences?
The big takeaway, which is something I came in with, but early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. And those were some of the things that were drilled into us around the kitchen table during meals. Yeah. And it was very much reinforced with me and our boss there at the Chef.
Yeah. So have you had an opportunity to do much travel or places that you've gotten to go and observe how other things are done elsewhere?
I have, mostly from a distance, so I'm not a great traveler. There's not a lot of good reasons for me to leave Spokane unless I have to, but I've been to places I would not have been. I've been to Florida and Georgia, Washington, D.C., although I was there as a youth, for conferences and for some of that experiential, hands-on, in-person type thing. But I'm always just looking forward to getting back home. This is home, and this is where I'd rather be.
You know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day about how there is value in that rootedness, because I'm pretty rooted as well. And I've traveled pretty broadly, but you do have a different perspective when you have a strong foundation anchor that you want to return to.
I had a conversation with a former city councilwoman who has encouraged me to do more travel when I said I wasn't too interested. And then she was making very good points and introduced me to a couple that was there that were very worldly in their travel, Europe and Africa and Asia and South America, etc. And I asked them where they lived, and they said, well, here in Spokane. And I asked them why. They said, well, because it's the best place we've been. And I thought that was very much validating and reinforcing of what I inherently felt.
Something you already figured out.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
It was good to have it reinforced by others.
I suspect you're going to answer how you're going to answer this next question. What prompted you to volunteer for elected office? But your pattern of service probably is a part of that story.
But I would have to say, Sulani, that I'm more surprised than anyone that I ended up in this role, because I imagined myself in a support role. I would hold the coat for who was going to step in the ring and duke out the public policy, and was engaged in that and found it fulfilling. Then reluctantly, I was drafted or accepted the challenge when it was posed to me, and I was told it was kind of my responsibility to step up and step in and do some of this work. And reluctantly, my wife and I accepted. Then I dug in, found it very fulfilling, very different from my background in construction on the face of it, but also very similar in the pace and sequence at which you do things. So you don't start sweeping the steps from the bottom, and you work your way up. Those, that's a far-fetched example.
No, but I know what you mean. You've got to figure out the right order that the tasks have to go in to get the final project in the right order.
So I was very flattered and also very humbled, because I knew that I did not have the textbook resume that would have suited me for this, with a background in construction and not a lot of formal, as we talked about earlier, what the conventional wisdom is on post-secondary education. I so didn't have that natural, lead into it. But when I got there, again, I found it very fulfilling and became a utility person because my interests are wide and varied, and was able to explore them. And I think that was noticed by my colleagues. And then, again, very humbled and flattered by my colleagues choosing me to chair the House Appropriations Committee, which is charged with constructing and negotiating the state's currently $46 billion two-year budget, which that teamwork and that service and all those other components that I was raised with have really come in handy in that effort.
Well, that's a perfect lead-in to giving you the last minute for the last question, which is to explain why should voters choose you for the state representative for the 3rd Legislative District?
Well, Lonnie, I think for me that's the wrong question. And the question is, why have I decided to run? For me, and I think, and one of the reasons
why you've decided to run again for the
why
position.
I've decided to run again. And I think the experience that I have in the legislature, I just completed my 15th legislative session. So there isn't a lot that I haven't seen. And the reason that I blanch or hesitate at the question is my resistance to getting into it was I didn't want to be a commodity like Cheerios, where you're branded and then you have your colors and your uniform and you go about this, because that wasn't my style. My style was to represent the people where I came from, the 3rd Legislative District, the streets that I roamed as a kid and roam to this day. And that experience taught me a lot about the values that I grew up with and that have been reinforced in my community, to take them and implement them in another chaotic environment, different chaos than growing up, but it is about order and structure and doing things in the right order, from my family to my construction career, which is also a team sport, my involvement with my union, and it's about the collective success of everyone as opposed to individual success. And those things have served me well, and that's what I offer to the voters of the 3rd Legislative District, and I have every confidence in their judgment in making the decision about who would best represent them.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in, and have fun while you're roaming those streets again.
Oh, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Spokane Talks is about you. Give us your feedback and comments at info@SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Spokane Talks is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys, Ponderosa Republican Women, and Rada Paint. We'll be back next week with additional news, views, and conversations. Please join us. So long for now.